Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about DA Alvin Bragg's response to Donald Trump's big motion to dismiss, which the judge in the case, Justice Juan Merchan, authorized Trump to file first before Merchan, would decide what to do about sentencing. So Trump did that last week. Bragg has now replied, and we've set up a pretty interesting situation, not necessarily what we might have expected before. Okay, so to review the bidding, Trump previously said, I need a new trial because you considered immune evidence. That's still pending out there. This is the much more aggressive and assertive motion, which basically goes for broke and says, vaporize the whole case. Make it that it never happened, essentially. And to do that, though, he's got some very big hurdles to get over. So there's, for starters, an argument that he wants to make that cobbles together both the Supreme Court's very far-reaching immunity opinion and, get ready for it, the famous OLC opinion that says a sitting president cannot be indicted or prosecuted. And that latter opinion matters because it doesn't depend on what sort of conduct it was. If a sitting president shoots someone on Fifth Avenue, she or he can be prosecuted, but not during the tenure of their presidency. That's what the OLC memo says. Now, the OLC memo is just an internal memo prepared for the executive branch, but Trump wants to treat it as law, and the Supreme Court's immunity opinion referred to it in a way that kind of nudges it along that line to being accepted. And basically, Bragg accepts it. Bragg basically says, okay, we know once the guy is the president, there's nothing left to be done. You can't make him show up. You can't do anything. He could have argued more aggressively, Bragg. He could have said, we're not initiating charges. That's already happened. And we've gone through the whole thing. So it's just the pronouncement of sentence. That's not such a big deal. Remember that the Supreme Court has said that a president can defend a civil case. Seems a lot less onerous to just show up for sentencing. But there's this other aspect of the OLC opinion that talks about the sort of dignitary hamstringing of the office of the presidency based on the opprobrium, as they put it, of criminal charges. So Bragg's filing is pretty darn measured and temperate, and basically says to the court, okay, you can really do a lot to accommodate Trump's notions about not compromising the operation of the presidency once he is in office. And that's a smart move, it seems to me, by Bragg, because we already know that Merchan is aware of, maybe painfully aware of, this special whole new set of what everyone is calling unprecedented circumstances, for good reason, a president who's also a felon. And Merchan, I think, and Bragg, I think, has calculated the same, will be looking for a way not to ignore all the considerations that Trump is invoking. But Bragg is doing something pretty clever, which is he's saying you can still sentence him, or at least have that possibility hover over him and not make the conviction just go away. Now, back to Trump's argument from a week ago. He really did try to sort of shoot the moon. He wanted to take a principle in the OLC memo about a sitting president and say it also applies to a president-elect. But there's all kinds of law out there that, in essence, we have one president at a time. President-elect is not a president. A president-elect is a private citizen. And he also wanted to expand the notion in the OLC memo to say you've really got to completely just bury this prosecution against the president. And that, again, is a stretch because what the OLC memo says, it actually makes allowances for what it calls temporary immunity, meaning that while the president is the president, you don't do things, but you can still go back and do them later. In fact, there's a long discussion in the OLC memo about the potential problems that might raise. Nevertheless, this is how we think it should work, etc. So Trump's trying to get over both those hurdles and say, A, it applies here and now to a president-elect, and B, the whole case goes away, never to return. So he's really set the stage of battle that's now before Merchan. And basically what it's about is not reversing a conviction. It's vaporizing the case, more or less rewriting history, which is his overweening kind of objection here, to make it as if it never happened. Okay, so what Bragg says is, you don't have to do that, Judge. Yeah, what he's got some weighty considerations, but there's some weighty considerations on the other side, including public confidence in the administration of justice. There are several he cites that Trump's conduct is serious, which I'm sure people could argue about, and that Trump as a defendant in court was kind of a jackass, which he was. But the real question is, if you just give him this pass, doesn't it communicate to the public that justice is really two-tiered, or it can be bought and sold and the like? Now, those kinds of arguments are going to be very unusual here. It's just, this is such unprecedented circumstances, and I think you can't count on Merchan to do anything specifically, even with these principles. It's not like he can always invoke, can Merchan, how odd and unprecedented this is. And Bragg knows that. But Bragg says 3 things you can do. First, you can sentence him right now, just before January 20th. And there it is. Now he's going to appeal his sentence, and he's going to try to fight. But come January 20th, everything is on ice, and you can pick up where you left off come the 29th. And that has the sentence out there, formally pronounced, and presumably that would make Trump apoplectic. That's the very thing that he most wants to go away, and the very thing that Trump antagonists, given their much more limited options in the wake of his election, probably most want to see: an actual formal passing of sentence. You're a felon, the presumption of innocence is gone, and you're doing, fill in the blank, even if it's just a fine, at least sentence has been imposed. Okay, option 1. Option 2, don't do that, and rule on his motion now to make the whole thing go away and deny it, which I think Merchan will, in fact, do. And then let him appeal, which I think Trump will, in fact, do, probably all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then we're going to hit January 20th. And at that point, it's a game changer. You cannot just go ahead with sentencing for all the reasons Bragg has talked about. So what do? Everything goes on ice. We'll see what happens. The appeals, probably even it'll be up to the courts of appeals, but maybe even they just get put in amber until 2029. And at that point, then things kind of thaw and you start again. But it's still been there the whole time. That's the second one. And notice in that one, he hasn't had a sentence pronounced, but it hasn't gone away either. And now the third, which is really pretty innovative and idiosyncratic, and I don't know what the court will make of it. I'm sure Trump will jump up and down and scream how unusual it is. But Bragg says, look, there's this thing called abatement. And they actually don't do it in New York, but they do it around the country when a defendant dies before sentence is pronounced. And in the states that do it, they enter on the record. The conviction happened. That means, by a matter of law, the presumption of innocence was vitiated. He's not considered innocent anymore. But you just say it was on appeal, and because of the immunity and his taking office, those appeals just stopped. In other words, you come within a whisker of closing things down, which is what Trump wants, making them just, burying them, but not fully. What Trump, who's trying to shoot the moon, wants to happen is the whole thing gets wiped from the pages of history as if it didn't happen. And Bragg is saying, here's something you can do that leaves no more problems for Trump. He can't, there's no practical issue anymore or dignitary issue. It's all over. But we've preserved in some way within the justice system the formal understanding that the current president of the United States is a convicted felon. Even if the convictions didn't go all the way up because of these unusual circumstances. Now, of course, everybody knows that. They can read the paper. But Bragg, what we're really zeroing in on, and the battle ahead just has to do with the systems somehow recognizing and preserving the fact of this case and what it showed about Donald Trump, and not letting him mow it down based on a principle that really doesn't even kick in until he becomes president. So that's going to be a real battle royale. It's now to Mayor Chun. He could rule any day, and he could set a sentence anytime. And the immediate thing to see is, will he actually say, you know what, I'm going to sentence you before January 20th? And Trump will scream up and jump up and down and try maybe to go to appeal to stop it. But Mayor Chun could nevertheless impose sentence and let Trump appeal that. But that's the kind of fight we're having. And we're having in the short term now, right? We're going to have first the question before January 20th, because everybody knows come January 20th, things change, about whether Mayor Chun will impose sentence. And then, assuming he doesn't, it's whether he chooses one of these two remaining options to not impose sentence, but nevertheless have the fact of it still around. In one case, to come back and bite Trump after he leaves office, and in the other, no possibility of that, and yet still the record is the record. So it's going to be very interesting. Trump's going to be very vehement to try to keep this from happening. And Bragg, I think, has wisely served up a fairly moderate course where all Mayor Chun is doing is, after all, acknowledging the facts as they happened in court. And in the name of not having the public think that justice can just be wiped off the books arbitrarily. So follow that closely. Mayor Chun could be ruling on it anytime. Trump will spring into action when he does, if it doesn't go 100% his way. And there'll be possible real Donnybrook between now and January 20th, at which point the legal landscape changes, as everyone acknowledges. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.